Hi everyone, welcome to video 6 and my last video of my Healthy Middle Way Parenting series, which is about focusing on what actually matters. So I'm sure you're aware that, parenting is an endless set of tasks and juggle, and if we listen to all the dogmatic views that have permeated this space in recent years, you'd think you need to do it all. But not only is there no way anyone can live up to this perfectionist standard, I'd also argue that there is no way to actually enjoy ourselves and our kids whilst living this way. So in this last video, I want to give you permission to focus on what actually matters and to pick your battles, so to speak. And I'll call this the 3 C's. So the first C, you probably guessed it, is connection. And I don't want to spend too much time on this one, as I've already mentioned it a few times in this series. But in my mind, this is 80% of the parenting battle. When connection is present, we can survive periods of dysregulation. We can get our kids to listen to us without constantly fighting, and we get to actually enjoy our relationship with our kids. With connection, it's quality over quantity. So it's not about spending every minute of every day with our kids and co-sleeping with them and doing everything. Connection is actually not as fragile as it's been portrayed to be or as we think it is. And it's also not about entertaining them constantly. To me, connection is about quality time, being present, actually listening to them and their stories and being genuinely interested in it, in what they have to say and what their world is, who their friends are, genuinely showing an interest in their world and showing them that you have their back no matter what. So whenever they have issues at school, spending the time to discuss it with them. Whenever something happens and it's not their fault, actually really showing that you have their back, like stuff like that has really strengthened the connection that I have with my kids. The second C is character. And I've been following a clinical psychologist called Dr. George Simon in the last year, and recently read his book called Essentials for the Journey. And honestly, this is a book that I really recommend all parents read, and I'll leave a link to the book in the description of this video. It talks about the importance of character. And his famous phrase is character matters. And I'm actually very excited because I'll be interviewing Dr. Simon on this channel very soon. Because he has a lot to say about this very topic, and I think it's going to be very valuable for parents and educators on this channel and to complement this Healthy Middle Way Parenting series that I'm finishing. So with the push towards what I call perfectionism parenting, where it's become way too child-centered, we seem to have lost the understanding that not only character matters, but also that it actually takes a lot of work to instill strong values of character in our children. Modeling is half the battle, but it's not enough. We actually need to work at it day by day by also putting firm boundaries when needed, explaining social rules, giving consequences for poor behavior as needed. And strength and integrity of character is actually the best protection for our kids to navigate this world. This is what will make them resilient and thriving, not easily manipulated, kind, able to push through challenges, and able to contribute positively to this world. Unfortunately, we live in an increasingly entitled world where entitlement and selfishness seems to have become the norm and actually rewarded, and where merit doesn't seem to exist anymore, where even the concept of hard work and pushing through challenges seems to be going out the window. We need to bring all of this back in. As parents, we have a duty to do so. And if each one of us do our job correctly, we can influence the world positively, one child at a time. And here I actually want to quote an excerpt from the book Essentials for the Journey by Dr. George Simon. In various times and places, character has been regarded very differently than it is today. It was once regarded as paramount for cultural standing. There were heroes too, heroes many could agree on because of what they stood for and how they lived their lives. They had their flaws, to be sure, but because of their overall character, they merited the respect afforded them. But in most modern cultures, and for too long a time now, character hasn't mattered very much. And we are getting exactly what we deserve as a result, a character-impaired society. The impact of this has been strong and pervasive. Marriages routinely crumble, trust in critical institutions is at an all-time low, civil discourse in the political arena has become an oxymoron, and the overall quality of our lives has suffered. Materially, most of us are quite well off, at least by historical standards. But counselors of all persuasions know all too well how miserable and empty so many of us feel underneath it all. We have a lot to appease and satiate us, to be sure, but at a spiritual level, we're bankrupt and starving. Still, we can reverse this trend. It starts with one child, one family, one school, one community. and most especially one heart at a time. So the next time you see your kid trying to do better and for all the right reasons, be sure to recognize and reward that effort. It will go a long way toward helping him or her develop the proper and balanced sense of self and self-worth, and further them on the path to both integrity and strength of character. And the next time you or someone you know steps up to the plate and takes the harder and more noble course, make sure to affirm the merit of that effort too. That's the way we'll interrupt the destructive vicious cycle that's been going on for decades between culture and character, and foster a more vitalizing cycle with the potential to improve all of our lives. So of course with our kids, we can and should understand what is developmentally appropriate behavior for our children and set them up for success as much as possible, and still also have high expectations and ask them to be accountable for their behavior. Ultimately, the child needs to feel loved, and that is an important part of the family, but that he isn't the center of the universe, and that there are rules and expectations that apply to everyone as a member of society. It's not blind and arbitrary obedience like it used to be. There isn't a hierarchy of rules, right? It's the same rules for everyone, and everyone obeys those social rules. For example, both adults and kids can't hit others, both adults and kids can't throw food on the floor. Those rules are very important in shaping good character in our kids. Because to quote Dr. George Simon again, what we fail to properly learn is just as important as what we do learn when it comes to character development. There are plenty of entitled, character-impaired individuals in this world that actually do not come from traumatic childhood, but from a childhood of being the golden child. So the issue was the lack of discipline and feedback. And the lack of explaining social rules and all of that. And I feel that that is what the gentle/perfectionism parenting trend is failing to see. And the last C is creativity. And by that, I do not necessarily mean art. To me, creativity can be a lot of things. It can be reading books, writing stories, drawing, exploring different interests and different topics. But essentially what I mean by that is what we come up with when we are bored. And that's why boredom is so important to foster with our children. And I know it's getting increasingly difficult to do that with our kids, right? Because they want screens, all the time. We are raising our children in, the age of where boredom doesn't seem to exist anymore. Like we just all so busy with filling our kids with so much activities and screens and all of that. So we actually need to make a concerted effort, and it needs to be very intentional to bring back some free time and some space for boredom in our kids' lives. I remember vividly as a kid that this free time that I had, the time when I was bored, were actually in hindsight always the best times to be creative, to come up with the best ideas and explore different things and interests. And I've seen it in my kids too. They complain they are bored, of course, but they always come up with the best creative ideas. One recent one actually was making fidgets with colored bands. They've done other things like actually making their own comic books. They always come up with the best stuff. So I really feel that we have a duty as parents to create that empty space in our children's lives. And when it's done with intention, because we understand that this space is needed and incredibly valuable for our kids, then we won't feel as guilty when they start to complain, and we won't be jumping and to entertain them when they complain. We remind them and ourselves that boredom is a good thing. And, I often tell my kids, I can't wait to see what you come up with. And when they actually come up with something, I tell them, see, you wouldn't have come up with that if you were not bored. So, boredom is so important for creativity, but it's also important for problem-solving skills because, they will actually come up with something, and, for overall well-being. We were never meant to be this busy all the time, and the amount of people that are anxious, depressed and burnt out in this world proves this point. So that's all I wanted to say on this, and I really hope that this Healthy Middle Way parenting series has been helpful for you. My intention in bringing this series was to bring back some common sense and some clarity amongst the dogmatic views that I'm seeing out there. So I really hope that this intention is felt and that it's been helpful. And please let me know in the comments. I'd love to know what you think about all of this. And thanks for watching.